for only $10. For that same $10 or an additional $10, you can get a poster. Do you see this poster? This is made by one of your Fremd peers. Read this poster, $10. You can get this poster from Drew right up here, which is amazing. Or there are buttons made by anybody in Creative Comp in here? Creative Comp students this hour? Not next hour. They've made buttons that you can come and purchase 3 for $1, so you can have some Writers Week swag. Writers Week is so special, and one of those reasons is because of you. You are a wonderful audience, and so we're so excited to have you here doing that. We have an awesome guest up here on stage today. I met Mark in Baltimore when I chased him? I chased you. It wasn't so I spotted Mark across the room. So you know English teachers, we love writers, right? So these are our rock stars. And I was at a conference and I was seeing Elizabeth Acevedo do a reading. She has written The Poet X. And Mark was there with his friend Nick Stone, who wrote Dear Martin, and they're just chilling. And my friend Miss Pine, who is Amy Pine, will be here tomorrow, Thursday. Thursday, she and I see Mark, we see Nick, we see Elizabeth. We can barely speak, but we want to meet them. We want to meet Mark, and so as he goes down the escalator, I finally decide, I'm gonna chase him down. So I followed along, and Mark, could have run, right? Could have walked away, could have left, but Mark was so gracious. They turned, spoke to us, talked, and willingly came to Writers Week to share today. Mark is an editor. Mark reviews books and TV shows online on the website, and they have a wonderful book that they are going to tell you about, Anger is a Gift. Thanks.
Hi, person over there. I like how you have multiple times during your thing you're talking about Mark did this and Mark willingly did this. This is just so you all know that I'm not being held captive and I'm not being held hostage. I'm full of jokes today. Okay, hi friends. My name's Mark. Here's how this is gonna work. I'm actually gonna read a different scene than the one I did in the first one. So if you happen to have been to the first one, you get a treat. Then I have a presentation for you. It's about 25 minutes long. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about that wonderful screensaver. It's full of colors. Hold on, let me make sure I can actually, oh good, it still does work. All right, 25 minutes long. It's about me, who I am, why I write what I write, what it's like to be an author. It has 2 secrets in it that you can't tell anyone, like you literally can't put them on the internet. And then we're gonna do question and answer. And the way that works is, when we get to that point, if none of you are raising your hands, I'm gonna start calling on random students and I'm gonna ask you questions. And they're gonna be awful. Who's the last boy you kissed? Okay, cool. So there's your threat. You think I won't do it? I've done it before. I don't care. I don't go to the school. It doesn't matter. All right. So I'm going to read a little bit to you from Anger's a Gift. This is my debut novel. It's a young adult novel about police violence, about protesting, about falling in love. I'm just going to flat out spoil something for you, and I don't care, because I really like this scene. So, to set this up, this is a book about a group of teenagers whose school decides to install a metal detector that is actually used to detect bombs in Afghanistan, but they decide to install it in this school because they're not white. Anyway, this is the scene, what happens that basically inspires the school to install metal detectors. So, here we go. The harsh tone in Hull's voice reeled him back in. "What's this?" Hull shouted. "Huh? You got an explanation for it?" Moss turned. Hull held a Ziploc bag up in the air, and Moss's heart dropped. White pills, lots of them. Shauna made to grab them, but Hull yanked them out of her reach. "Mr. Jacobs, hold this," Hull said, passing the baggie to him, and Shauna was stuttering. She couldn't get the words out of her mouth fast enough. No, Shauna managed to say. "Don't. What is that?" Hull shouted. "You peddling drugs in my school?" "No, I'm not," Shauna shot back. "I promise. Please, let me explain." Hull's arm shot out hard, and his forearm hit the spot just below Shauna's throat. And the man pinned her against a locker, her back hitting the metal so hard it buckled. Moss dropped his lock on the ground, heard it clatter against the tile, and Shauna tried to yelp. All that came out was a strangled and pathetic sound, like the spit had curdled in her mouth. "Don't lie to me," Hull yelled. Mr. Jacobs, stunned for a few seconds, leapt forward and tried to pull Hull's arm off of Shauna. "Stop it," he yelled. "Let him explain." He caught himself. "Let her explain, I mean." Moss was pushed, and he banged his elbow on his open locker door, and students poured out around them, some coming from open classroom doors, others from various hallways. The noise rose sharply, echoing, bouncing off the high ceiling and the walls. Moss held on to his locker as he watched students swarm around Officer Hull, Shauna, and Mr. Jacobs. Phones were out. Someone shouted, "Leave her alone!" Mr. Jacobs, terror on his face, raised his arm up in a sign of concession, but then lowered them and tried to push everyone away when he saw things spiraling out of control. But Moss's focus wasn't on the assistant principal anymore. Hull had pushed his arm into Shauna even harder, had lifted her in the air, and Shauna was struggling to breathe. The yelling pitched higher, and Moss just acted. If he didn't, he knew that his anxiety would consume him. He threw himself forward toward Hull and was met with Mr. Jacobs' open palm against his chest. "She can't breathe," Moss said, and he pushed back as hard as he could. "Stop it." And Jamile was there too, screaming at Hull, screaming at Mr. Jacobs, trying to get to her. "Get your hands off her," and Jamile yelled. They were surrounded. There were so many people that Moss could no longer see anything but bodies. Students were kicking lockers to add to the din. A chair flew overhead and crashed against the space above Shauna's locker. It plummeted to the ground and hit another student, having left a sizable hole in the wall. The screaming collided with itself, bouncing around the quad, amplified in that space, echoes on top of echoes. Yet in all the noise, the next sound was so distinct that the mob quieted, if only for a moment. Thunk! Hull had backed off. Shauna was on the floor. Her head had cracked against the tile. She was shaking, twitching on the floor, her eyes rolled up. "What the hell? What the..." Hull never finished what he was saying. Mr. Jacobs shoved him to the side and he smacked into a couple of kids who had crowded in the hallway. "What have you done?" Mr. Jacobs shouted, his pale face red, his eyes narrowed in rage. Moss fell to his knees next to Shauna, but he had no idea what to do. He grabbed her shoulders and tried to keep her from sliding across the floor. "What do I do?" Moss shouted, the beginning of a panic attack swelling in his throat. And I'm gonna cliffhanger you there, because I'm evil. Thank you. All right, so, here's the deal. I'm glad I read that because I get to talk about something in this presentation that I didn't get to the last time. So hi everyone, let me go to the next page. My name is Marco Shiro. I'm a queer Latinx author and I write books for kids. So I wrote both young adult, which is for generally kids around the high school age, and middle grade, which is for kids who are in middle school. I like to be very upfront about these two things. I grew up in a place, and I'm going to talk about that place in a little bit, where I was not allowed to be out. I was not allowed to be myself, my whole true self, and now I get to be that for all of you. So I'm queer. The end, deal with it. Okay, I'm very excited about that though. It's cool. I'm also very upfront about being Latinx. If you're not familiar with that term, it is basically a gender-neutral version of the word Latino. My ancestry is based mostly in Central America. But I'm upfront about that, one, because I like to tell people that I am ambiguously brown, because people like to try to guess what country I'm from. You're always gonna be wrong. Good job. Don't do that game. It's terrible. I also get a lot of questions because of my last name. If you're familiar, Oshiro is actually a very traditional Japanese last name. I am not Japanese. I did my first school visit ever to kids ever for this book outside of Naperville, and I'm not kidding you, a kid there asked me, "Yo, why aren't you Asian?" And I told them, because it's not a video game and I didn't choose my whole character at the beginning. That's not how this works. Can't just Asian. I'm Asian now. I'm going to explain a little bit about that too, because it goes into one of the characters in Anger is a Gift. So, how long have I wanted to be a writer? I am one of those rare weirdos who actually knew what I wanted to do when I was a kid. My goal when I was in elementary school, first grade, I told everyone that I wanted a book with my name on it. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an author. It was one of the few things that I was super, super good at. I loved reading. I started reading around age 4. I started telling stories by the time I was in first grade. I read my first book intended for adults at age 8. It was about 1,000 pages long. So I read way above my grade level. I would check out the maximum amount of books every 2 weeks at the library where I grew up whenever my mom took me there. And for reference, that was 20 books every 2 weeks. I would read 20 books every 2 weeks. I read the entirety of my middle school library in 8 months. The whole library, every single book in it. I'm a giant nerd, everyone. I started writing stories in elementary school, and I didn't stop for a long time. So this has sort of been in my blood. Like, this is the thing that I do that I'm very good at. If you're curious, the book that I read when I was 8 years old, oh, I went too fast. It was Stephen King's It. Oh, okay. How many of you have read Stephen King's It? Yeah, how many of you think I shouldn't have read that when I was 8 years old? I didn't understand most of it. There's some very adult things in this book. So what was I like as a teenager? This is actually a photo of me and my identical twin brother, our senior year. This is actually AP Literature class. That tie is real bad. I'm so embarrassed that I put that photo in there. Anyway, so my brother and I, we grew up in Riverside, California, which is about 85, 90 miles east of Los Angeles. It's in the desert, so I don't like this cold. It's terrible. I don't know how any of you live here. It's awful. I am what's called a transracial adoptee, and this explains my last name. A transracial adoptee is someone who is adopted out of their ethnic or racial culture and into another one. So my adoptive mom is white, my adoptive dad is Japanese and Hawaiian, which is why I have a Japanese last name. I was the smart kid in junior high and high school. I did track, cross country. I was in theater, was the lead in the musical my senior year. I did the music band. It was Harold Hill in the music band. I hate that musical. Oh my God. You know, there's been people who've been singing before the things. If they sing a music band song, I may combust into flames if that happens. I was very excited that they did a Rent song the last time, but please no music band. Anyway. So let's talk about why all of this stuff matters. I'm sure you're gonna hear a lot of bios from people who are doing this writers everything, and I think it's interesting, but I actually like telling you all of these things about my life because they affect my writing. So I am often asked why my first book is so, and I put it in quotes, dark, because I kind of don't like that word. I don't think my book is dark. But why I choose to write about teenagers experiencing immense hardship. So much of my book is autobiographical in some form. The high school is based off of my high school, and some of the high schools my friends went to. That scene I just read from you, it wasn't Shauna, it was someone else. But I watched that exact thing happen to a student. I went to a school where we had resource officers. Do you know what a resource officer is? You don't have them here at this school, do you? Yeah. You have one? We only had them. We had no security guards. We just had cops at my school. So that means when you got in trouble, you got arrested. I'm gonna let that sit there for a moment because now I'm gonna tell you that I was valedictorian at my high school. I got arrested 4 times. So it kind of didn't matter if you were a good student either. And part of what was so frustrating about this experience was that without any sort of like in between, we all just got criminalized. All of us. It didn't matter. Wait, let me just tell you one of the reasons I got arrested, because this is a fun story. I was in art class. Turns out I'm very artistic when it comes to words and music. I can write music, I love music, I play guitar and bass. I love it, it's great. Yeah, I can't draw anything at all, nothing. If you asked me right now to draw a circle, all of you would be like, please erase that from my memory, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. I cannot draw. So I'm in this art class because I have to take a creative arts, and I've already taken creative writing, and I can't take it again. I'm in this class, I'm trying to draw a self-portrait, I look like a burn victim. It's awful. It's so bad. Like, it just was bad, awful. I crumble up a piece of paper, I throw it towards the trash can, and I miss. Not good at basketball either. That's it. That's what I got arrested for. Littering and disrespecting authority. And what I mean by arrested was the resource officer came in the classroom, handcuffed me in front of everyone, sat me in his office for 4 hours. With no food or water or bathroom breaks. So that's the kind of environment at the school that I went to. Some of you have this look on your face where you're just like, did you go to school in hell? Yes, I did. But the thing is, I had a difficult upbringing and a challenging childhood. And so when I was writing Anger is a Gift, I didn't know how honest I was gonna be about this experience. And then I just was like, you know what? I had to deal with a lot of these very difficult things. And so I hear this a lot, usually from adults, almost never from the kids I'm writing for. Oh, we don't think the kids should read this book because it's too dark. We don't think you should read this because it's too challenging, it's too upsetting. We don't want to expose them to these things. And part of me understands, like, you want to protect kids, you want to make sure they're having a good life. But what that does is it left out kids like me, who I didn't have a choice. That was my life. The thing I'm writing about in this book was my life as a teenager. So where does that leave all of us who had to go through these things? I had to deal with things like child abuse, racism, rampant homophobia in the city that I grew up in. I think it is not fair because I could not opt out of this experience. And let me be even a little bit more specific. When I was 16 years old, I got kicked out of my house for being gay. Permanently, I've never gone back. I was homeless my junior year of high school. High school. I had to have a full-time job when I was 17 years old, 40 hours a week on top of school. I had to completely support myself. I was alternately living on the street or couch surfing with friends, and I was forced to become an adult when I was a kid. So I think it's been very natural for me to write about these experiences. I think about who is allowed to be a kid and who is forced to be or to make adult-like decisions when they're a teenager. So what I needed most when I was 16 was someone to tell me that what I was going through could be conquered, that you could be the hero of your story, that you could deal with difficult things that seemed impossible, but there was a way to win at the end. Because there were no stories that I was reading. The worst, the closest that I ever got is in the early 90s, mid 90s, is there was a bunch of those after school specials that was don't do drugs or everyone you've ever met will die. And there was one about homelessness, teen homelessness. And the reason the kid was homeless was because he did drugs. And I was like, okay, well that doesn't help me, I'm not doing drugs. I mean, my mom thinks being gay is a drug, but that doesn't count. That's not the same thing. And so I think about I want to recreate these very believable worlds because I know there's a kid out there somewhere who just needs a story like this. So it does have a happy ending, which is that I'm immensely petty. I'm a Ravenclaw, so I use my pettiness to be smart. That's what I do. And I was valedictorian in my high school, and I did that for myself because I knew I was going to be on my own. And I knew that I needed a scholarship, and I knew that my parents weren't going to support me because they didn't agree with me, which I don't think that's a thing you can agree about, but that's a separate point. So I went to Cal State Long Beach. I got a full ride scholarship. I started as an English and creative writing major because I had a plan. I was going to go to college, I was going to get my MFA, and then I was going to have a book published by the time I was 25 years old. And I thought I was set on that path. I lasted one semester as an English creative writing major because as it turns out, I didn't actually like learning about it, particularly at the school. It wasn't very good. The workshops were terrible. They did not like genre fiction. And they kept telling me that I needed to write important works, which means no fantasy, no science fiction, no horror. Everything has to be literary. And I was like, you're all so boring. I want to write weird stuff. So I went to school for 3.5 years. If you do the math, that's not 4 years. Hi, friends. You're all looking at a college dropout. What's that? Sorry, I'm laughing because the last time I said, hi, I'm a college dropout, and someone over here cheered. And so I was like, oh no, what's happening over here? I would say yes. But I like talking about this because I think there is one idea of what you have to do to be a writer. There's one idea of what you have to do to be successful. The first day of my last semester of college, the scholarship program I was on announced that they did not want to cover room and board for all of us on scholarship. So I got a bill for $9,500. And they said, if you don't pay it in 7 days, you have to leave school. So me dropping out of college was more like I was forced out of college because I had 95 cents. I didn't have $9,500. And so I dropped out of college, started working some weird jobs around LA. What is most important about this period of time is I stopped writing. And I actually thought that I was never gonna write again, that I was never gonna write a book, that this thing that I was very good at, my whole dream had been deferred. But I'm happy to tell you, I submitted a writing sample to a startup and got hired at this company called BuzzNet in Los Angeles as an online journalist and a concert photographer, and I spent 10 years writing about the music industry. I got to tour North America and Europe with more bands and artists than I can possibly remember. It was one of the best experiences of my entire life. Because I'm a huge music fan. I do love books, I do love writing, but my one true love is music. So this was some of the work that I did. That's Henry Rollins at Coachella, Jeff Rickley from Thursday, James Hetfield from Metallica. I got to meet and talk with all of these people and spend time with them on their tour buses and travel the world with them. But here's the thing that was also very important is this. I'm so glad I got to do journalism before I got to writing a book. The reason being is that journalism taught me how to write very quickly. To give you an idea of a typical schedule of my day when I was a music journalist, I would get up around 10 or 11 a.m. And I'm sure most of you are like, I wish I could get up at 10 or 11 every single day. Well, hold that thought. I would get up, answer emails, deal with any edits that I had on the story that I had to post that day. Our tour bus would usually arrive at the venue around 2 or 3 p.m. From that time, I would have about 30 minutes to an hour to eat. my first meal of the day. From about 4 to 6 p.m. is when I would do all interviews because the band is already sound checked. This is the only downtime they're gonna have before they have to be in the venue for specific things. So if I had interviews scheduled with opening bands or the main band, or I was doing video production stuff, I would have to do it during that time. First band goes on at 7, I would have to photograph anywhere from 3 to 4 bands, take anywhere between 2,500 to 4,000 photos. After the show, edit down each band's set of photos to about 20 that I could publish online, ones that looked as good as these ones, and then write the article that was also due anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 words, and that was due at 7 a.m. the next day. And then I would turn it in and go to sleep and wake up 3 hours later and do it all over again. Some of you who are real excited about that 10 a.m. wake up thing are now like, how are you not dead? Maybe I'm a ghost, I don't know. It was pretty great. Here's the thing that it taught me, is that I had no time to have writer's block. You cannot have writer's block when you have to write 2,000 words in 4 hours on 3 hours of sleep, and when it's just due at the time it's due. You can't say, oh, give me another week. No. In journalism, especially if you're doing stuff that's very up to date, you have to get it done. So it taught me, even when I didn't know what I was actually gonna write, how to put words down. They weren't always good words, but I got things down on the paper because something on the paper is easier to edit than 0 things on the paper. So I'm very happy that I did this job. So after years of working in journalism and nonfiction, I got an idea for a story. I had not written fiction itself in a very long time, and I got it in my head that, if you don't finish this and get this done, you're never gonna have a book. And this goal that you had that's kind of gone to the wayside because you do have this amazing job is never gonna happen. So September 2012, I got an idea. I realized I had one chance to accomplish this goal. I started working on the book that month. It took me 17 months to finish the first draft because I had a full-time job, and I found every free moment I could to work on it. Some days I would write 100 words. That's all I got down. And that book is real long. It is 116,000 words, so it took a long time to write. It took me until the summer of 2015 to write enough drafts and edit it so that I felt like it was ready to go out in the world. So then my next part is that I went out to try to find a literary agent. If you've heard of the term an agent, you will often hear them associated with like professional sports players or musicians. This is someone who basically takes your work, goes to all these publishing houses and is like, give my client money to publish their stuff. So it took me 1.5 years to find an agent. He sold my book in 23 days. So much quicker than I expected. And Anger's a Gift came out on May 22nd, 2018. That's the hardcover cover, and then this is the paperback version of the cover in the paperback version came out last year. So where did this book come from? I love talking about where ideas come from because all of my ideas for every story or book that I've ever had have always come from a strange place. First and foremost, the book came from me getting really mad in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and because I'm a nerd and a Ravenclaw, I wrote a whole book in response, because I'm a giant nerd. It also was my chance to talk about being on the receiving end of police brutality, and to talk about what it was like to go to a school like the one that's in this book, like the one I told you that story about, because I just did not see books dealing with it. I wanted to write about a family that did not have connections with the police, because you see that a lot in stories about police brutality. There's like an uncle or a cousin who's a cop, and they're sort of the liaison between the two groups. I wanted to talk about grief. I lost my father in 2006, and grief is a huge theme in this book. I wanted to write about how love can be complicated by an unfair world. But more than anything, I just wanted to write a book where queer people of color like myself are at the center instead of always being the background characters who never get any lines or never get any adventures. So yeah, we can talk about the book later. But I do want to talk, one last big thing is, what is it actually like to be an author? Because people are like, what do you do all day? I have an office space in Harlem, in New York. I share with 2 other writers. And the reason we got an office space together is so that we don't sit and play Candy Crush for 7 hours without working. Because That's what I did this morning. Last night I was up to 2 a.m. playing Mario Kart. It's very bad. They should not have released Mario Kart for the phone. It's dangerous. Let's assume it's not today, because this is a very unusual day for me. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of school visits. But on a day where I'm just home, I don't have to go anywhere, what's my day like? First thing I do is answering emails. I get between 250 to 500 emails per day. And it's only going to get more because I only have more books coming out and there are more people trying to invite me to events. I have a publicist who works at my publishing house who is booking all of these events and trying to get me to do interviews. I have fans, readers. I get stuff from my agent, get stuff from my editors. Writing, I write every single day. And what I mean by writing is it's not that I'm just writing a new story every single day. I am currently working on, oh my God, 3 different books that are all at different stages and 7 short stories right now at various different stages. It's a lot, but I love it because this is what I want to do. So sometimes I'm plotting, I'm making outlines, I'm working on drafts, editing. Sometimes my routine is the same, other days new things crop up. But then the best part of it all is that I get to travel. I grew up very poor. We did not get to go anywhere at all. I have been very lucky to have the success that I have because not only did I get to go places, I don't have to pay for it. So great. Did you know I got to fly first class for the first time last year? Oh my God, guys, I get rich people. Like I was sitting in first class and I was like, I want to oppress everyone. This is incredible. Everything's free, like really nice food. I don't even drink, I'm straight edge, I'm completely sober. And I almost wanted to like not be sober to just have all the free alcohol because they'll let you get drunk on these flights. This is probably the worst thing to talk about to a bunch of teenagers, but whatever. Anyway, it's amazing. I get to stay in these bougie ass hotels where often people think I'm the help. I'm gonna tell you a story because I don't care. Hey, I was in Nashville, Tennessee. I got to do this huge book event at this bookstore called Parnassus, which I'd actually been to before. I was very excited about this. I got checked into a hotel called the Kimpton. And I want you all to memorize that because if you ever get the chance to stay at a Kimpton, go, because you will immediately become the worst human on the planet so you could stay there again. This is the nicest hotel. The hotel was bigger than the room was bigger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. It had a gold-plated bathtub. Why? Why is the bathtub? I don't care. It was amazing. I took 3 baths that day. I don't care. I check in. People at the front desk are super nice. We're so excited to see you. Thank you for staying here. All of it's taken care of. You don't need to show a credit card when you're an author. You don't need to give it. You just show your ID. Everything's taken care of by your publisher. So they, on their end, they're like, oh, you already have your black card down? Oh, okay. Oh, we're going to give you the special treatment. And I eat it up. I don't care. I never got to have these experiences. I go and I get in the elevator. Right at the last second, this like very tall, very slim, very beautiful white woman rushes in, puts her arm out, blocks the elevator. It opens. She walks in. She looks at me and then drops her bags at my feet and says, room 705. And it took me a moment because I was just like, is she hitting on me? I haven't had a woman hit on me in a really long time. Oh shit, you look real good, Mark. Good job. All right. But then it hit me, that's not what she's asking. And I like kind of looked at her and she goes, room 705. And in my head I was like, oh, she thinks I'm like a bellman. Oh, this is real unfortunate. So I just said, oh, I don't work here. And she looked me up and down. And there was a clear path in front of her. She could have been like, sorry, made a mistake. She didn't go that path. She said, well, you look like you do. Remember when I told you I'm a petty Ravenclaw? She gets off the elevator. She left her bags there. So I went up to my room, put my bags down, called the front desk. This really mysterious figure just left these bags unattended on the elevator, and I feel really unsafe. I'm like, oh, are you Marco Shiro in room whatever? With such and such rewards number? I'm like, yes, that's me. And like, thank you for helping us out. And I got changed and went to my book event. And when I walked through the lobby, she was sitting on a couch in handcuffs. Okay, cool. Yeah, don't mess with me, I'm petty. So anyway, I tell you that story because it's funny as hell. It's so great. Her whole day was ruined. And I'm sure she was like, but I don't look like those terrorists. I don't do that sort of thing. Well, don't leave your bags unattended. Anyway, I tell you that story because one of the things that's been really weird about traveling as an author is like, it's cool to get access to these spaces, but there are constantly people there who think I don't belong there. And so I really love like aggressively asserting myself in these spaces. Like, no, I belong here. I can't tell you how many white men have told me I'm standing in the wrong line when I'm boarding for first class. Like, will come up to me and be like, are you sure you're in the right line? And yeah, I know how to read. I'm an author. This is literally what I do, is read words all the time. My favorite thing was one guy did that, and then I got on the plane, and he got on like 10 minutes later because he was sitting in the back of the plane, and as he passed, I was like, enjoy, coach. Petty, I'm so petty. So these are images, this is the worst tangent I've ever gone on. These are images from the last couple years of my life. It's so great to be able to tell you this. I'm literally living my dream. I get to tour the world. People have read my book, like, and asked me to, like, there's not a single day that this gets old. Every single day, it just blows my mind. Like, I get to write words, people read them, and they want me to sign books and take photos of me. It's amazing, it's incredible. So these two wonderful ladies who are on either side of me in the top right, that's Danielle Clayton and Zoraida Cordova. They are the ones who I share an office with in Harlem. You should read their books, they're fantastic. So finally, the last thing is my gift to all of you, which is neither of these things have actually been announced, but my publisher's not in the room, so I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyway. So I just ask you, please don't put them on the internet, but I have 2 books out in the next year and a half, and I'm gonna tell you about them because I'm not done. I have so many more things. I have another young adult book. It comes out September 15th, 2020. Wow, that's really soon. Oh my God, I have another book, that's really cool. It's called Each of Us a Desert. It is a fantasy, magical realism, horror novel set in a world that is nothing but a desert. How many of you are familiar with a movie that came out a while back called The Village by M. Night Shyamalan? It's not very good, it's kind of garbage, but it's the best garbage movie. I love it, but it's garbage. And the reason it's garbage is M. Night Shyamalan does this thing where he gives you a twist at the end, and the twist always makes everything more interesting, but then it's never explored. And that movie has a twist that would have been so great to explore, and they don't, and it made me so angry. So because I'm a nerd, I wrote a whole book in response. This is about a teenage girl who has the magical ability to take stories out of people's bodies, and she does it to cleanse the wrongdoing in her village. And she's told if she doesn't do this, their god will get angry and burn their village to the ground. And so she's told she can never leave for the rest of her life. She has to stay there and clean everyone around her by taking the wrongdoings out of their body. And one day she takes a story from someone, and in that story is a detail that does not make sense, because now it appears that everyone in her life has lied to her about who she is and what her power is. So she decides to leave, and that happens 25% of the way through, and you find out what is actually outside of the walls of her village. And it's a magical journey of discovery. It's very messed up. I hope all of you have nightmares because of the terrible things that I wrote in this. Very excited. I mostly just want to get revenge on everyone. I don't know why. So I have a middle grade book out next year called The Insiders. This is a book aimed at a younger audience, but I hope you will still read it. If you're familiar with the Harry Potter series, there's this idea called the Room of Requirement in those books, which is a magical room that doesn't show up until later in the series. And I had this idea of like, God, I really needed something like that when I was in elementary school and middle school, when I was getting bullied a lot. I was bullied for being gay, which is really weird in hindsight, because I'm like, oh, you were right. Like, I was gay. Not that I deserved it, but I'm like, you were right, I was super gay. But I think about how much I could have used a room like that. Well, when things got really tough, I could just disappear into it. So I wrote a whole book about 3 kids who are all having a difficult time in their schools, and they discover a magical room that protects them and allows them to visit one another, but then one day, the room won't let them go home until they solve a problem for someone at each other's school. And it is a very wacky adventure, it's a lot of fun, it has a ton of jokes. You're not ready. That's me. Thank you, friends. I'm gonna come back to this. So if you wanna look me up, find me, or whatever, I do like, whenever I do a presentation, I always update it. And whatever meme image I'm using the most in my group chat with a bunch of my author friends, I put at the end of this. And because it's winter in New York, and it's awful, I hate it, I've been using this a lot. Because this is what everyone looks like. Look at that AirPod, it's the best detail I've ever seen, whoever did this. Anyway, Baby Yoda, dead ass. This Baby Yoda says bet a lot. All right, okay, cool. All right, it's time for questions. Oh no, don't do this, because I'll start asking questions. Anyone have questions? You can ask about anything, it doesn't have to. Oh, yo, you're standing up. I appreciate that. Oh man, What was your coming out story like? Oh, I got outed. Oh, I mean, cool. It's not cool. Why did I say cool? Oh, I'm gonna hide and never come out. Yeah, let me make it worse for you. I got outed by my priest. I used to be Catholic. The next question is gonna be, is that why you have that tattoo on your neck? Kind of, yeah. I got outed by my priest, who I came out to in confession. If you're Catholic, you now realize what a horrible thing that is. Yeah, he told everyone in Mass. Yep. There's a slightly cool end to this story, which is that I then maybe overreacted and maybe cussed out my priest during Mass. I was mad. Sorry, I like the slow clap, and I was like, should we be clapping? No, that's not the thing you should be clapping for. Look, I was mad, but I'm actually not proud of that reaction. Like, I think there was a better way to handle it. I get why I reacted that way, because it's a very upsetting thing to have happen. The cool part is that 3 months later, I get a certificate in the mail. I am one of only about 300 people in the year 2002 who got excommunicated from the Catholic Church. And I have a paper signed by the Pope. He touched it. And like, ex-Catholic me is like, this is actually pretty cool. Like the Pope, what? Dude, of course I framed it. It's like right over the entryway. And people are like, what is this thing? And then I tell them the story and they're like, you're weird. So anyway, I will say that is my initial coming out story, but then my secondary coming out story is I get to come out to strangers like all of you every single day, and I love it. I really do. I really love getting to be me. I really love getting to be this all the time. I'm ridiculous. I'm just so over the top. Like, I want you to know this is not a persona. This is how I am 100% all the time with all my friends. Because I've had my friends like see me do school visits and stuff in New York, and they're like, "Oh, you're just you. It's not any different." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really have like a fake persona for this. I'm just gay all the time." That's what I do. Thank you for that question. That was really cool. I know there were other hands that went up. Oh, right here. I'm coming over. Okay. This is a great question. So, when you're writing a story, I love craft questions, by the way. So thank you for asking one, because a lot of times us writers don't actually get to answer questions like that. Because people are asking things like, who's the worst celebrity you ever met? Which I will also answer. It's Katy Perry. I'm not going to acknowledge that over there. So, how do you, when you're writing a story, how do you connect to events? So I'm going to give you my secret, which is now not a secret at all because I widely talk about it. I don't know why I called it a secret. I'll give you what I do. I am an extensive outliner. I extensively plan every story, short story or novel, before I ever write one word of a manuscript. And then I give that outline to my agent. He edits the outline, so he edits on the story level. And what I mean by an outline is I figure out what are all the major events and character stuff that has happened in the story. Sorry, I've been talking all day. My voice is dying. Before I ever write a word. And I do that because when I'm actually writing the words, I want to be concerned about what words are going on the paper, not what's actually happening. So this middle grade book that I have, The Insiders, I wrote a full synopsis of the whole book. Every major event is described. There's some dialogue in this outline or whatnot. And then with my editor, we edited it 4 times and went through because some of the events didn't make sense. Or they were like, this character needs an arc. What's going on with them? Here is why I love doing that. It took a long time. I would say I worked on this outline 7 or 8 months. That's a long time to work on one out. I had other stuff that I was doing. But I started writing the manuscript for this book January 1st. Today is what, the 28th? And I've written half the book. Because when I'm sitting down and writing, I'm not thinking, what is this character doing? I already know. I know exactly what they're doing. I know what mood they're in. I know all of this stuff. So if you're having trouble and you're writing, figure that stuff out before you write. It's called pre-writing. You can do brainstorming in it. That's what I do, because then when I'm actually writing, I just don't. That's the thing I picked up from journalism. I always wrote an outline of whatever article I was going to do before I started writing it, so I at least knew the main points I was going to hit, so that I wouldn't have the writer's block of what is the next paragraph. Then, yeah, cool. All right, we're going to go here in the front row, and then in the gray back here.
So you said you also write music?
I do write music.
So is the process of writing music for you and the
they're so different, completely different. One is, I have if you did the math, I have 1 semester of formal training as a writer. I learned everything by just writing and then being edited. And I'm very lucky as a journalist. I had a fantastic editor who taught me so many things up from a nonfiction point of view, and then my editors for my fiction have taught me a lot as well. I don't know how to read music, and I don't know music theory. All of the music that I've written is just by ear. Like, you could play a song, sit me down with a guitar, and an hour later I'll figure it out. Which is a cool talent, but it means that all of my music writing is emotional. All of it. There's no technicality to it at all. If you were like, Mark, play a fifth harmony, I'm just like, Normani? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what a fifth harmony is, except for Normani. Because she's the only good singer in that group. Sorry, okay, I'm not gonna get spicy about it. But no, so music is all emotional. Writing is emotional too, but it is technical. There's so many technical things. To give you an example, a thing happens in this book. I'm not gonna spoil what it is. If you've read it, it's a thing, capital T, it's a big thing. And one of the technical things I wanted to do was talk about how grief constricts time. And that when you are grieving, time just stretches out so much that you, like a whole day will pass and you have no sense that it actually passed. So one of the things I did that's technical is that as this character is grieving, the chapters get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until there's a chapter that is less than a page. And I have people who've read it who are like, I started getting anxiety because everything started doing, and I'm like, good, that's a technical thing that you can do that requires a craft level that I can't do with music because I don't know. Like, I don't know what scale is the saddest, but I can write music that sounds sad in my head. Does that make sense? So they're completely different from me. I'm also just a better writer than a musician. Sweet, that was a good question. All right, here in the gray. Well, hold, please. So, yes, right here.
What's the craziest thing that you've seen or witnessed at your high school?
Oh no. What's the craziest thing you've seen or witnessed at your high school? I went to a cursed high school. Cursed, it was evil. We had more students than you do, so it was even bigger than this one. My graduating class was 1,000 kids. Our graduation took like 7 hours. It was a nightmare, so that was a nightmare. I think the wildest thing I ever saw definitely has to be oh boy. We had pranks, and it was a whole tradition every year. And there was a year that a bunch of people, we still don't know how they did it so quickly, turned the swimming pool into Jell-O the night before a swim meet. And did it in the school color of red. And I mean, it was solid Jell-O. And we were like, how did they cool it enough to turn into Jell-O? Like, they didn't just throw Jell-O mix in and we're like, oh, it's red. Like, someone jumped in, that wasn't me. It was me. It was really disgusting. Let me just tell you, jumping in a pool of Jell-O is a nightmare fuel for the rest of my life. Like, I feel like it was like the opposite of being born. Like, it was sorry, that's really gross. Okay, one more question, which is way up here. Who are you pointing at? In the red. Yeah, come on, stand up. I think I can hear you. Man, whoa, that was a good question. Okay, question is, because it's true. Like, sometimes I think about what I went through as a teenager, and it sounds fake. It just does not sound real at all. Like, I actually sound like an after-school special. Like, so how do you make your life interesting if you haven't been through those struggles? So first of all, I'm going to say that your life is already interesting, and I don't think people need to struggle. I'll be real with you. I'm glad that I struggled and came through on the other end and have been able to turn that into art. But if I had the chance to like redo it and could change things, I would totally take an easier time. like it kind of wasn't really worth it. I would have rather had loving parents who kept me in the home, and I would have loved to have been able to come out and like have a boyfriend in high school, but I didn't. So here's the thing that I'm going to say to you is that I bet you actually do interesting things. I bet you're creative at something that you either don't know you're creative at, and you should pursue that, or maybe pursue something new. I don't think adversity is required to be a good artist. I think the only thing you need is your imagination. And that sounds super cheesy, I know it. But the coolest thing, some of my friends who had very privileged, easy lives have come up with some of the most messed up stories ever. So my friend Danielle, who's in one of those photos, she wrote a book called The Bells. I highly advise all of you to read it. It is a book that's basically Scott Westerfeld's The Uglies meets Marie Antoinette's Court. It's about people who are called the Bells, who can physically transform anyone's body to make them beautiful. Because everyone in this world is born like sickly and gray, and you have to pay the bells to become beautiful. This book is a nightmare from beginning to end. And Danielle had a pretty easy life. And I don't think she needed to go through a super difficult, like underprivileged life in order to come up with that. I think if you have an imagination, you could be just as interesting as I am. Sweet. Thanks, friend. Who am I giving this to?